Welcome to the Inside Support Driven podcast. I have a call with Longan, who reached out to me from essentially from a marketing perspective. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's an interesting role. We're a fairly early startup, and so I'm playing many hats at the moment. Marketing is one of them, and the other piece is on post-sales support. So we do a lot of work with CX teams, essentially, and I own relationships for helping making them as successful as possible as well.
Excellent, excellent. So I asked Logan if we could record at least a part of our conversation as a episode on the podcast to talk about for marketers who are joining the community, right? Just to share information about the community because we want to use the podcast for people to get answers to their questions and to learn about it, right? And so first question I've got for Logan is how did you hear about Support Driven?
I heard about support driven from my network, essentially,
Hmm.
friends and colleagues who, know that I work in this customer support space. They mentioned that there is a lot of great insights and great people as part of this community. And in my role, that's really important because we really care about making customer support teams as successful as possible. And that I think would be incomplete if we did not have strong insights into what customer support teams truly care about. And just hearing about that, it made it really important that I'm part of this community.
Excellent. So that leads to the next question I've got for you is, so you heard about the community, but why did you decide to like join the community and come check it out?
Yeah, I think in both of my capacities, so whether it's from a marketing perspective or from a post-sales perspective with the customers that we have, you can think all you want about here's what customers care about from a CX perspective or what a customer support team cares about from a CX perspective, but nothing really beats kind of hearing it from the people who do jobs like this every day. And when I first came into the community, that was one of the key things I was really interested in. I wanted to go into not just the intros to see, the makeup of this community, but also understand like what are people talking about and what are people seeking advice on and what are people seeking advice on across different industries, across different parts of the customer experience journey. I think really just trying to learn about what makes teams hum and what makes teams frustrated is just a seriously enriching and I think necessary experience that we should do.
Very cool. Very cool. And so just so listeners know, we have never met before. And I know you'd reached out to me, and that's why we set up this call to kind of chat about working with Support Driven, right? And so a question I've got for you is, have you worked in this space before, or is this kind of like your first company, first role in the customer support, customer experience space?
This is the first formal role that I'm playing in the customer support space. Before this, I was someone from kind of large corporate, which was an incredibly different world. But by nature of my background, of a lot of which included mathematics in college and coming over into the corporate space, one of the key things as I was kind of finishing up my old job is, like customer support and like AI is a really big area and a really important area for which there are a lot of opportunities. And to be honest, more importantly, a lot of risks in terms of how people are using it properly.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And so is this also your first startup, or because you mentioned you'd worked kind of in a corporate environment?
Yeah, correct. Correct. First startup.
Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that I have seen has been super helpful is for, well, for a lot of people, right, who are getting into the space. The community is a great way to, like, as you mentioned, learn about who the people are, what they talk about, what they care about, right? Because I think in support driven, I like to think we have a lot more open and just kind of real conversations than you might get on LinkedIn or what people publish on LinkedIn. Because I think for most people, or for most of what I see on LinkedIn, it tends to be very like polished and, kind of a sanitized view of what people are thinking or asking.
Agreed.
Yep. So tell me a little bit about some of the things that you do and that you're like at the start, or some of the things that you're responsible for at the start, because I think that can like drive some of the, you know, things that.
Yeah, happy to share some of the things that I do. Maybe I'll start with kind of the post-sales capacity because that was my first role in the startup and kind of marketing came after that.
Mhm.
And I'm going to try not to talk about my company too much because this community is for, customer support teams and not about other companies. But like for context, kind of Lorikeet is a platform that helps businesses deliver universal concierge experiences for their end customers because we believe that customers deserve better support and we believe that customer experience teams really want to deliver that support and we want to build the platform that lets them do that. In my post-sales capacity, one of the things that I was responsible for is making our existing customers as successful as possible. So I have a few customer relationships. We focus on the fintech and health space. I had like essentially 3 fintech customers who were growing and had amazing customer support, but they knew that only relying on human agents to deliver support for a growing business is just not going to be sustainable. And these are companies in very complex spaces as well. And so using kind of AI to deliver that is too simplistic a way to kind of think about how they can deliver that experience. You needed something much more nuanced. So I spent a lot of time working with them to both kind of help them figure out the best way to leverage the connection between humans and AI, because we have a strong belief that the future is not only AI, it's humans and AIs working as part of a team. And then secondly, just kind of letting them explore our platform and just letting them figure out how they can make amazing experiences for their customers. And that kind of brought me to kind of the marketing space where one thing we discovered about people who are, trying to leverage AI in customer support is a lot of really well-intentioned people want to make the most out of AI, but there is still a lot of, I suppose, like education, experience,
Hmm.
upskilling, learning more about the space that's required to help make them successful. And one of the key things that's important for our perspective is trying to really distill what are the really important parts from delivering great customer experience, and then and only then translating that into what can AI do to make that successful. So we're really trying to gather all of those insights and then really just try to upskill the space. So it's not even kind of trying to sell to people at this stage necessarily. It's really just trying to elevate the collective community understanding.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So I think you bring up a point that I do get questions about, like who is in the community, right? And if they're this kind of people that you want to connect with, build relationships, right? Or could have as potential customers, right? And so how would you, at this stage, because I know it's not set in stone and it's subject to change, right? But how would you describe like your ideal like customer at this stage?
Ideal customer for our company.
Yes.
Our ideal customer, companies who work in complex regulated spaces,
Mhm.
who are really, really obsessed about making customer experiences as great as possible.
Right.
And I say that importantly because we took a very conscious choice when we first designed our product architecture that
Mhm.
we were not solving for the lowest hanging fruit and go upwards. We built a ladder which solved for what do the most complex cases need in order to be successful. We believe that being able to solve that means that we'll be able to distribute that more broadly.
Right.
So we are still in kind of the like space of we want to focus on making the really complex cases good. And so, that's the general principle. What's often happened is that people from industries like fintech, like
Mhm.
health tech, crypto, energy, utilities have been coming to us a lot. I think the second part, which is just really important to call out when I talk about people wanting to make customer experience as successful as possible, is like one of our core beliefs is that using AI in customer support is not about driving up deflection rate,
Mm.
trying to push the customer away from, your support. You can imagine it is actually quite easy to celebrate high deflection rates where the company looks at a dashboard and says, okay, great, like not many customers made it through to our human support team, when in reality, and this is from conversations we have with prospects and customers alike, where if someone's celebrating that deflection rate, we would then just ask them, hey, like, can you just like take 30 tickets at random and just read them and like end to end. And what often happens is that it's really just the end customer has rage quitted because the solution has tried to, bear hug them into focusing them in like the
Right.
AI conversation. And
Right.
so that's not to say, we understand that this is like a priority for some companies, but we generally really, really try to counsel our customers to focus on a better experience than
So
necessary.
what do you think it is that with the, you know, because there's gonna be some group of people out there that value that, right? And other groups of people or another group of people who may be the exact same industry, that may even be competitors, right? But they don't value it. So what do you think is the common thread between the people that do value it?
Value kind of great customer experiences. I can probably talk about topics like this for, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes. So I'm just trying to think. If I were to boil it down,
Hmm?
the key distinction here is the prevailing sentiment, or at least what I've seen around how people thought about AI and customer support is cost reduction.
Hmm.
If I implement AI, I'm going to need fewer human agents, and therefore that's going to help the company's bottom lines. High deflection rate is an easy driver from corporate mathematics to try to make that happen.
Yeah.
I think the framing that has often resonated well with customers who are successful with us is you like looking at AI as a way to drive growth
Right.
for customer experience. A lot of customers come to us, more because they have had amazing customer experience, but they know that their team is going to grow, and that growth is going to outpace the kind of human support that's required. And the question then is less about how can we cut costs, but more about how can we make sure as we grow, customers are still getting the same level of experience that a human who can give their undivided attention to the critical issues at the parts that matter, as the company grows as well. So that really is like the distinction. If I were to kind of like sum it up, it's really if you think about AI and customer support as a lever for growth and amazing CX instead of just cost reduction and deflection, I think that actually puts companies in a great stead.
Great. So that's helpful because I think the people in who join support driven, the people in our community are the ones who inherently see a lot of value in what they do. They're not generally their, like their mission isn't to cut costs to the absolute maximum, right? And so I think for who you're describing, you're gonna find people like that in our community, people in fintech, health tech, other industries, right? And I think the you made a great point of like the people who see like what they're doing is, being inherently valuable, strategic, driving growth, right? The other thing is we as a community, right? If you were to survey the community members, most of us would not say that we're running call centers, right? Because I think that's a different mindset and a very common mindset that is much more like cost focused, right?
Yep.
Yep.
And I think I've seen examples of that, to be honest, for what it's worth, from the welcome and introductions. And I saw that it was probably you or a member of this network who had this initiative where, we let people share their content and put together a creator hub where people can share their perspectives. Personally, like I've seen some of these posts and I thought they were fantastic and like just like embodies kind of the spirit that you had.
Excellent.
I've started following some people on LinkedIn. They kind of connected with me on LinkedIn as well. And when I
Very
see their posts and shared their own perspectives around customer experience, customer support, there were a few kind of like nuggets of wisdom that I haven't considered myself, which for me is just incredibly valuable. And like I do think kind of to your point, like the people in this community are generally just really, really keen on having a great customer experience.
Yep. And yeah, so I think you bring up a great point of like, I think the best way to understand the community is to experience it, right? So just dive in, you know, engage with people, read what they're writing, ask questions, right? And because I think that experience is something that if I tell you it, right, it's not the same as you experiencing it yourself, right? And however, one of the things that we have learned over the years is we've evolved or kind of updated our code of conduct over the years, right? And so we have a section for vendors in our code of conduct, which is we could always do more to tell people that it exists, right? But the general rules, especially essentially the vendor specific ones we have around it is do not DM people, right? Unless you have their permission, you've been invited to, because we've had issues with that in the past.
Mm,
Right?
mm,
And then we also have a channel specifically if you want to share. Like let's say if your team is creating content or resources, right? We have a channel called Bulletin Board where we invite people to essentially share what they're creating freely.
I should probably join that channel because it's not in my default set of channels. That's a good tip.
Yeah, and generally we do not allow sharing resources or promotions or whatnot in our other channels because if we had every company in the space, sharing everything that they created, right, then that would drown out the conversation, or that could easily drown out the conversations in those channels.
I agree, and that's something that I'm trying to respect and keep a very fine line on. Correct me if this is not how I'm understanding the core spirit of the community. It's for people who are in, the customer like CX space, and the community should be maximally available for people to have the way to discuss and talk about CX stuff. And so that's kind of a tightrope that I am conscious of walking as well. But, at the end of the day, if I'm being honest with myself, I am a vendor as well. So like being able to get educated, I guess, on the do's and don'ts like the way you have, and if there's any further guidelines would be really helpful.
Yeah, and like you did, because you reached out to me in DM, and for
Hopefully that was okay in your
100%,
no
you can
DM
always
rule.
DM me, right? Because I would say that rule generally doesn't apply to me in terms of if it's related to the community. But if you were to DM me
Yeah,
like to try to sell me something, then that's different, right?
agreed.
But you can always DM me, and especially if there's something like I'm not sure because it's it's fuzzy, it's gray, right? Then I'm always happy to like essentially figure it out with you
Great.
or with anybody, right? And so we have bulletin board, right? We also have essentially a promotion program that we run. So there are options to promote things to the community, right? That are paid. Those options we moderate, right? So like if there's only like so many spots, right, that we're kind of promoting to the community at any given time, right? So I
Mm,
think that's the other pieces, it's not that we're, these things are like forbidden. It's just like we want to make sure that when we do it, that we do it in moderation.
agreed.
Yeah.
I am curious. I've been told that there
Mhm.
are channels that are vendor focused.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I've seen those channels just
Yep.
yet. Can you tell me a little bit more
Sure.
about that? Not saying we need to have a channel, sorry, vendor focused channel, but just
Yeah.
kind of curious on the
But it's
dynamics
good to
there.
know kind of what they are, why they exist,
Hmm.
right? So for example, we have a Zendesk channel, we also have an Intercom channel, we have a HelpScout channel. So we have these different channels that, they start with the U. So the idea is that they're
Hmm.
user group type channels, right? For
Mm.
people that work with those platforms. And
Right. They already work like they are existing users of the platform.
often they're existing users. We also have people who join because they're curious, about that platform. Of course, we also have competitors join each other's channels as well, right? Naturally.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But the reason that we started it was we had in the early days so many people wanting to talk, especially in the early days, we had so many people in the community who were using Zendesk that wanted to talk to other people who were using Zendesk, right?
Mm,
However, that was like not great for the people who did not use Zendesk. And so we
sure.
created the Use Zendesk channel to
Got
give
it.
their own space.
Yeah.
And then just made it very clear because if we also have people who work as Zendesk, like, oh, this is like not an official support channel. You should contact official support. But
Oh, interesting.
yeah, because from a support perspective, it makes sense. Though I can see where they were coming from. They didn't want to kind of create an expectation, uh, because there are Zendesk people in there that like you should use this instead of going through the official support channels, or have it end up becoming this like support channel that they were also like taking responsibility for, right? Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense.
yeah, yeah. And so after we started that one, then we started adding a few more, right? And generally we do those when there's enough interest and support from community members to like want to have a space, right? For that, we've also started experimenting doing that kind of more officially, like as collaborations with those companies. So we're in the early stages of what those, kind of an official collaboration
Okay.
could look like. Right?
Interesting.
Yep. And that also brings up within our code of conduct, right? So if, for example, we have a Zendesk channel, right? So like the people that work at Zendesk are free to like share and promote freely within their own channel, right? So they
Mm,
sharing every piece of content that they make, every event that they have,
got it.
they want because within that channel, it's high value, right?
Mm,
But a Zendesk event, like in other channels would not necessarily, be as high value for people who are not using Zendesk.
Yeah, I'm now a bit scared to ask this, given I've been
Sure,
in the
go ahead.
community for a while. Where can I find this code of conduct so I can familiarize myself with
If
it?
you go to the at the top of the Chit Chat channel, right, which is kind of our general channel, there's links there to it, right? So if you go to the description,
The description of the channel.
yep, of Chit Chat.
Oh, chit chat. Yes,
Yep.
got it. Yes, members manual code of conduct
Yep. Yep.
right there up top. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's just one of the things, it's there, right? But not everybody like knows to look for it, right? And so that's one of the reasons why we want to do this podcast and have other ways for people to learn about the code of conduct.
Yep. Yep. Perfect.
Also thinking about other things that we get asked. See,
I had one question, which
sure.
is to what extent are, you know, channels
Mhm.
or people's ability to create their own channels, provided it's not, necessarily vendor related and like more just about CX topics of discussion, kind of controlled and moderated. For what it's worth, like I'm here from primarily really from like a learning perspective. And so like that there might be just certain like questions that might not necessarily fit into existing channels. And, to the extent that people will also resonate with it, I would love to be able to create a community like that. So wanted to kind of see the, guardrails around that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. We've set up the permissions so only admins can create channels. Otherwise, in the early days, we didn't have that. So people were just creating like
Everything.
a room, right? Like, hey, this is
Sure.
my room, right? You can join it.
Yeah, 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 sure.
Right. And generally the guidelines around that is one is if there's enough other people who want to like have that channel and that there's not an existing channel that could kind of like fit under, right? Because it's sometimes
How do you get that support or proof of people wanting to, sufficiently many
talk
people
about it,
being
right?
okay,
So
cool.
for example, if you had let's just say if you wanted to start, we have a fintech channel, but let's say we didn't have that, right? It's like I would like, you know, to see if there's enough interest for a fintech channel, then
Mm,
we have another channel in the community called About. That's where we talk about like
mm,
starting new channels, right? And other things kind
yep,
of related to
got it.
what happens around the community, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're doing or we're working on, right, is when people request new channels is also, seeing if building teams within the community of community members to like to support those
Mm,
channels, right? Because it's easy to start a channel, but it's also very easy for them to turn into ghost towns.
yep,
So
agreed.
we're evolving, going forward, right? When we start channels, like what are the ways that we can like, essentially get this channel to critical mass, build community around the channel. And so like you know, so that's another aspect I think that as support driven is kind of maturing as a community that we're essentially figuring out right now.
Yeah, that's a good idea and kind of good instinct. And I appreciate the tips
Yep.
around kind of starting a new channel.
Yep. Yeah. So one of the things also bring up too from like, let's say people who are kind of working with vendors, right? Is that for us, we're always people first, right? And so we have community members who are in support and then they change jobs and now they work at a vendor, right? And this is true of everybody, right?
Yep.
Like it's always people first. And so like you're always you first and then, you work at a company, right?
Yep.
And maybe that changes over time, right? And so what we recommend with two people is always essentially be yourself, right? Like,
Mm, great. Yeah.
that you're always
Good
welcome
advice.
to like contribute and help out and, participate, engage with other community members, right? And so, um, because especially because we've been around for a little while, right? That we have seen people essentially go from support into, let's say, maybe a marketing role, maybe a sales role, and then back and forth, right? And so
Mm,
it's fluid. We've also had people who are like, let's say, in marketing, but then they at a startup and then they go to another like CX related startup, right? So that's the thing I want, I guess, love for more people to hear about, right? And
mm,
to like
mm.
adopt, right? Is that first and foremost, you're a person. And then,
Yeah, that's
you're
great.
kind of also your role at, your company.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good approach and really kind of humanizes people in this channel, which,
Yep.
in this day and age is probably more important than ever.
Yep. And then the relationship we have with vendors in our community, and this is something that continues to evolve, right, is always we're always looking at how can we work with vendors in our community to do things for the community as a whole, right? To do
Yep.
things for community members, right?
Yep.
The vast majority of people that we talk to and work with, right, like they want to create valuable resources. They want to create value,
Yeah.
that's the resources, events, or
Definitely.
right,
Yeah.
for the community. And I think that's where we see the opportunities when it comes to collaboration. That kind of by doing things together, right, that we can potentially create things that are bigger than the sum of their parts.
Yeah. So does that mean like co-creating, like
Yeah.
support driven, and say a company
Hmm.
try to partner and collab on
Yep.
resources or events? Okay.
Yep. Resources, events,
Cool.
and it's an area that we're always kind of experimenting with. Like, for example, we have an event coming up next week, right? And we have a couple of companies that were interested in doing something for the event, but they weren't necessarily interested in being sponsors or kind of like,
Mm.
you know,
Yep.
frankly, paying the sponsorship fees that would come with being a sponsor, right?
Sure.
So we've created what we're calling a kind of a new category of like contributing companies, right? So they're contributing to
Yep.
the without being sponsors, right? So they don't get all the benefits of being a sponsor, but they can still add to the event kind of like a potluck.
What does it take to be a sponsor, and what does a sponsor need to do, and like what does a sponsor get?
Yeah. So first and foremost for us, it's always about being in good standing with the community. So essentially being a good citizen, right? And not breaking our code
Agreed.
of conduct.
Yep.
But then within that, with every event, there's different kinds of sponsorships, different levels, right? And so depends on like what's the event that you're interested in and like what are the different sponsorship opportunities there, right? But we're always looking with sponsorship, we're always looking to, find that intersection of like value both for the sponsor and for the community members,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so and that's one of the things I do like about our events is that every event has its own set of experiments, right? So it's not like a cookie cutter, like, oh, we did this 5 years ago, and like
Mm.
that's how the way it works today.
Yep. Where can I find more information on kind of the sponsorship options
Yeah.
available, just so I can get a good understanding? I presume maybe that's on a channel somewhere, but if you tell me this is more like conversation bespoke driven, it would be
Currently,
good to
it's
know
it's
as well.
conversation driven, and so
Cool.
like this is
Yep.
the thing that we want to work on, which we don't have, is like essentially the way to becoming a sponsor is for now to talk to me, right?
Yep.
There should be a better way to do that,
Makes a
but
lot of sense.
we're not there yet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's true for all the other like collaborations and whatnot, because that's where I think the opportunity lies, right? Is where can we collaborate? Where can we do things together as vendors, as support driven, as the community, right? And yeah, and so that's kind of what so I think vendors have an essential role to play in the community, right? Because the space that we're in, the industry that we're in is, there are vendors, there are the customers of those vendors, right? And it's all part of the same ecosystem,
Yep.
right? And
Yeah. Fair.
I think, and so the more that we can like the more things we can do together, I think the better for the ecosystem. So that's the philosophy, that's the like perspective we're looking at. And, you know, and I think that means that some things make sense to do with us, but there's also going to be things that make sense to do without us, right? Because
Sure. Yeah. Totally. Totally. There needs to be a shared sense of value and goals across the two parties. So I think this is really helpful, and I do realize I have a meeting, and maybe you do as well.
yeah,
Thanks for kind of sharing an idea like this. I think we also talked about most of the questions that I had as well. So I think that's really great.